Hi, everybody. So I have a special guest on my show. His name is David Liston, and he was a former Zen monk. And he has a lot of insights that he shares on his channel about personal well-being that I think could be very beneficial. So welcome to the show, David.
Thanks, Leon.
Could you share a bit of your history of being a monk and like how that influenced the way you think about Zen meditation?
Well, my story of being a monk, it's a long story. I mean, I was a monk for about 11 years and beginning in 2004. For those people who are interested, the whole story or, what I wrote about it is actually in article form. So if you wanted, I could give you the link to that and people could take a look. It's, much more detail about the whole process. I mean, how did being a monk affect my understanding of Zen? You could say that my life as a monk had three big parts to it,
Mm.
which are in fact the practice or the study of Zen. Sometimes people think of Zen as just Zen and not Buddhism. Zen is just, you may think of just sitting meditation or Zen in the art of whatever, Zen in the art of painting, Zen in the art
Right.
of dot, dot, dot. I think many people get the impression it's just either some technique or maybe a state of mind. But my experience is that Zen really includes a life of discipline, a stable mind, and a realistic view about ourselves and the world, which in Buddhism, the formal terms for that, the three studies of Buddhism are discipline, concentration, and wisdom.
Yeah, so let me see if I understand. So you're saying that some people have ideas like that Zen is simply a concept, but it's something that is more of a practice, something that you kind of embed more deeply within yourself, and basically you practice over time to get like a realistic self-understanding.
hmm Yeah, so it's a way of being that includes, we could say, a disciplined way of living, which doesn't sound as romantic or as mystical as meditation, meditative states, but we can't do without that.
Right. So as you said, the practice of Zen Buddhism is not romantic and it takes a lot of discipline. So what brings you on this path of being a monk?
First, I was attracted to Buddhism or looked into Buddhism because I was struggling with anxiety.
Hmm.
It was around my college years, but basically from high school all the way through college, I struggled with anxiety, a lot. I was anxious about everything, and it was more social focused anxiety. So I was very unsure about myself and even how to be with people and just very self-conscious. But I was also anxious even when I was by myself. I'd worry about things that I'd find something to worry about. If I was driving, what if the
Hmm.
car breaks down? What am I going to do? Um, things like that. So I was looking for a way to deal with anxiety, and I first just went to the library at college and was just searching through the religion section and different forms of meditation, Taoist, shamanistic meditation. And when I found Buddhist meditation, I thought to me, it resonated the best with me.
Hmm.
And after years of studying and practicing, I realized it was such a powerful way to transform my experience. My anxiety was decreasing a lot, and my confidence was building, and I also found more meaning in life. But I still felt I needed direction and guidance. So that's when I looked into becoming a monk and is it possible? And eventually found a teacher and a community and just did it. The teacher I found was Master Sheng Yen. He's a Chan Buddhist monk in the Chinese Chan tradition. So I was fortunate that, not too far from home in Elmhurst, Queens, there's a temple, which is still
Wow.
there. And that's where it started.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. And we have some similar background in dealing with social anxiety and that leading us on a journey of wanting to learn about ourselves and wanting to provide personal healing for ourselves. Right. So yeah,
Mhm.
I hear how like challenging that is, but it led you on this path. And what do you feel like helped you with your anxiety, like either through meditation or from your work with your teacher?
So the meditation piece allowed me to really see what was going on in my mind. And what
Hmm.
was I thinking? What was I feeling? And just, how I was so fixated on myself, thinking about myself all the time, thinking about how I would be in the future, worrying about myself in the future, all the while I'm just sitting in a room by myself. That was revealing to discover that I didn't have to be in any social situation, yet there was this worry, this rumination, and fixation to these thoughts. So
Hmm.
meditation helped me to see that, to gradually learn to let go of fixating on my own thoughts. And that brought about, some freedom. But then there was, the practice of discipline, which, just includes living in a more healthy, balanced way.
Hmm.
In the monastic life, that's a big piece. I think that's the most different part about monasticism compared to lay life is a lot of structure and discipline from when you wake up in the morning to what you do during the day to when you go to bed at night. You could almost think of it like a military for peaceful warriors, you
I was
know?
just thinking about that. This is like a military training, but I really like how you put it together. It's for peaceful warriors.
Yeah, yeah. We're not being trained to kill, we're being trained to live wisely. But, a big part of the monastic life is also training ourselves in compassion,
Hmm.
meaning, not only being kind to ourselves or learning how to relieve our own suffering, but the monastic life includes a lot of work with people. Part of my training was eventually I was a counselor for the newer monks.
Hmm.
So this is not mental health counseling. I was just like a mentor to the new monks. But meanwhile, I was also a new monk. I was only maybe 3 years into it when they asked me to be a mentor for the new class. So it was actually at that period that I learned a little bit better how to take care of people and how to, be considerate of other people's situation, their needs. What are they feeling? I was looking after this new group of monks, and the rule is to go to bed at a certain time and not to read or be on the computer past 10 or something. So usually after meditation, everyone's encouraged just to go to bed. But there were some younger monks who would stay up and they'd go read or they'd go try to finish their homework on the computer. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to help everyone be diligent.
Hmm.
And in the beginning, I was more like I don't know what you call them, sergeant. And I'd have a really stern approach and be like, it's 10 o'clock. Why aren't you sleeping yet? And it was really like a drill sergeant kind of approach. And that didn't work.
Hmm.
Like I felt angry. Their reaction was bad, and they felt like I was just too much. And through that process, I eventually learned how to just show concern for people and encourage them to, do something that's healthy or disciplined. I learned that if I saw someone reading or staying up late, I just go knock on the door and say, "Hey, you know what time it is? 10 o'clock. Don't stay up too late." I would still provide the reminder, but it was without the anger, without the force, without the,
Hmm.
the rigidity. And that's
Right.
it's just a simple example of how, I learned a bit more of how to be sensitive to people and how to
Hmm.
still help them, but in a way which is much warmer and
Hmm.
well received.
Yeah, I really love that example a lot, because it kind of reminds me of mindfulness practice. It's like we could be hard on ourselves, right? But when we kind of notice and name what's going on, say, hey, I notice this is going on, and we do that with compassion, we are more responsive to that.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So compassion goes both ways, to ourselves, to others.
Wonderful. Yeah, I really like that example.
I thought of when I came back to New York and I was helping to run the retreat center upstate. That was another period of learning because I had learned so much when I was in Taiwan at the headquarters. I learned the whole system of how things are run. I also learned how retreats were led there, meditation retreats. But it's funny, when I came back, it was culture shock. Things were all different here. But I wanted things to be better here, yet I had this preconceived idea of how it should be. Oh, it should be like the way it was in Taiwan. Oh, it should be
Mhm.
like this, and the rules should be stricter. And again, I found that by being too attached to my ideal of how things should be, I
Hmm.
became rigid again.
Hmm.
And I remember there's some retreatants who had certain needs. I'm trying to think of an example. Sometimes it was with food or something. People would have dietary needs. There's a lot of that. And in the beginning, I was just like, no. If you can't eat what we provide, then no. Don't come. Or some people would say, or can I keep this in my room? I'd just say no. This is the rules. This is the way it is. I wanted everyone just to let go of all of their attachments and concerns. But it was a very insensitive mindset because I was so stuck on my ideal.
Hmm.
And slowly and gradually by being aware of how attachment to my ideal made me miserable because I
Right.
was in a way always fighting with people, or I was unhappy that things weren't going perfectly.
Right.
Eventually had to learn to let go of the ideal and be more flexible. So if
Hmm.
people came to the retreat and they had some dietary needs, we'd try to accommodate. But if it was too complicated, we would explain, sorry, you can't do this. But for that, well, one example, we eventually allowed people to bring food to the reception hall and put it in a fridge there. So if they really, really needed whatever it was, they could come to the reception hall, get it, and then leave
Hmm.
without breaking the rules of the dormitory, while still taking care of their needs. And I think that was again another process of learning to let go of my rigid attachment to ideas.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I
Hmm.
watched your video on self-worth and I thought it really spoke to me a lot because I've been recently in a state where I felt very vulnerable about my own sense of identity in terms of like what am I doing, right? And that's something that you really emphasize because we could really identify ourselves with what we do.
Hmm.
Right? And I really like how you allowed your audience to see the opportunity in that, to see, wherever state we are in life, there's opportunities that open to us to be able to learn something new about ourselves or to exercise our energy in a different way, a different light.
Yeah, I mean this when I was making that video, I was inspired by the people I was working with, the people I was mentoring. And I found there was a common thing and I think it also applies to myself, when we feel like we're lacking, when I feel like our self-worth is lacking, it's because we're basing it on something that's not reliable. Like we're basing self-worth on something that is changeable and something that depends on a lot of different conditions to even be. So like our health, one person I was working with, their self-worth is based on their health and their sense of vitality,
Hmm.
having strong big muscles, and having a certain degree of health. But her health was declining because of different reasons. She was gaining weight, she was not able to work out as much, and that started to bring down her sense of self-worth and confidence.
Hmm.
But it's like, when can we ever maintain our health?
Right.
And what I mean by that is, even when we say maintaining our health, we're eating right, we're exercising, no matter what, we're aging, we could get sick, we could get injured, we could feel like we're in perfect health and then break our ankle. And we can't do half, if not 90% of the things that we identify with. So basing self-worth on really fragile, impermanent, conditioned things is just a recipe for suffering.
Hmm.
Whereas, like you said, there's always an opportunity to either do something else, to be flexible and learn from the situation. So the core point of that video is that no matter what the condition is, whether it's good health, bad health, making money, not making money, in a relationship, not in a relationship, it doesn't matter what the conditions are. If we have the right attitude, we can be at peace with them. So a sort of self-worth or self-value is not based on those changeable things. It's just based on the experience of being at ease with the changes.
I really like that idea. The example that you gave is, for instance, if we lose a job, and I work with someone he wasn't employed for a while, and at first he was like struggling a lot, but later on, there's so much that he learned from that being unemployed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not having a job to identify with and having freedom to kind of have time to reflect and to understand himself because everything changes all the time. There's always ways that you could make that into some sort of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, right. So that's a kind of wisdom. So if we
Mm.
emphasize wisdom, then there's always self-worth because every moment is an opportunity for seeing things and responding to them skillfully.
Right. Yeah. So, David, I really appreciate you being on the show. So, I'm going to put your links down below so you could find them. But I'll put down his website. But also, you mentioned you have two YouTube channels, right?
Yeah, so one channel is focused on mental health and the other channel is focused on Buddhism.
Wonderful. Okay. So, I have everything down below in the description box. So, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Leon.